Welcome to Podcast This Escape, the podcast where we talk about the escape room that we escaped from in the previous episode of this podcast. Robin, Jeremy, congratulations, you did it! You almost rode a slide!
Thank you. I almost ride a slide pretty rarely in my life, so I appreciate that I almost rode a slide today.
You rode multiple great slides.
That's true.
You
I
just
I
didn't
forgot.
ride the one that probably would have killed you.
That's all, at the same time, I'm very much not a person that enjoys heights. So I think I probably wouldn't have ridden that slide in real life too.
Yeah,
I would have absolutely ridden that master slide all the way down. And I'm mildly afraid of heights. It's just like that just makes it better to me.
It's the thrill. You gotta chase that thrill. Congrats. I think you two did very well getting through that room. It's not the easiest room, I would say. Given ones that we've done before.
I limit myself. Like, there aren't many different things in this room. There's barely more than half a dozen things to look at. And yet, when I give myself boundaries, I think it means that I make things harder.
But no, I think you two did really well. Did you enjoy going through that? Was there any moment that you felt particularly proud of your solving abilities?
I like that I called out the letters pretty quick. Like the sound.
very
The
impressed.
onomatopoeia, is that the right word?
You got that so fast. I thought that was really cool.
I will say that was my proudest moment, for sure.
Yeah, fair.
I felt very happy when we figured out the towel thing. Like, that was a really fun moment.
Yes, it was so interesting from our perspective, because it was like you had all the elements and we knew you had all the elements. So there wasn't much hint we could give that wasn't like too
and
heavy.
you'd already thought of using first letters because naturally you would. And it was just that last little bit of interpreting the rule to mean first letters or last letters.
And it was just and it was great because we could see it in your eyes as it happened. You went, "Oh, wait a minute. It's the O from kangaroo. This is like we've caught it." Yeah, it was good to see.
Yeah, that was very much a case of we just sort of sat back. The two of us stopped talking because we knew that you were getting it and that you were going to get it, and that the best thing that we could do was let you.
That's why I like puzzles, because like when you solve them, it feels really good. Even if it takes a long time sometimes, which, like I said, I don't mind that. Like, I don't care as long as I get there in the end. Like, it's still fun for me. I don't want to waste other people's time. You know what I mean? But, yeah.
I think this is an escape room thing in general, but it's also maybe even more so a double thing because it's on a podcast, is that it feels like what I'll call dead air. It feels doubly like painful. If that makes sense. We're looking at a puzzle, but this is meant to be a podcast. And so the longer I spend looking at something without speaking, and I know, speaking out loud is a really important part of puzzle solving. I know we're going to probably talk a little bit about root trees in the future, but our hint system in root trees was a rubber duck. And that's because rubber duck programming is a real thing. So speaking the puzzles aloud definitely helps. But when you're in that moment where you're just trying to okay, we have all the pieces, we're trying to put them together, it's hard.
You're waiting for a click
to
moment.
Want to talk.
I
don't
totally
want to talk,
get that.
But it's also hard to not want to talk because I know that people are listening to me.
True.
Yeah. It's interesting.
It is one of those things, and I think that's part of, like, we say this before we start the show. It doesn't get recorded, but part of the sort of our intro is to remind the guests, like, it is an edited show, so not every moment has to be good radio. So that if there's this point of like you need to take some time to just be silent, you can with a little bit of extra leeway. Because if this was like some podcasts out there will just literally record and release, and if we did that for this show, it would be so much pressure to be like, oh no, I have to be engaging, and not be able to think. And it's interesting, like, I don't know how often you've watched people like stream root trees or other puzzle games, that sometimes it'll be hard for people to make logical connections because they're trying to talk and keep entertaining and try and, they're talking to their chat, they're talking to this. When people turn puzzles into entertainment, sometimes they don't want to take that time to just sit and think.
Yeah, we do that with crosswords. We make some bonus content where we solve cryptic crosswords, and we take so much longer than we would otherwise because we're talking.
We're filling the space. But it is an interesting dynamic to do.
I've definitely noticed that, and I think that's one of the reasons that streaming and recording yourself playing video games and going on Twitch it's a very difficult skill. People probably just assume, oh, they're just playing video games for an audience. I could do that. But if you try and do that, trying to be entertaining for other people, at the same time that you're also trying to focus on this thing that for 99% of people takes their entire focus when they're doing it. It
Mm.
is a very difficult thing to do.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I've tried to film myself playing puzzle games, and I find myself just pausing the video all the time because I'm like, well, I have to consult my notes, and you don't want to hear
Yeah.
that. You don't
We
want to hear me talking to myself.
we for a while were on Twitch playing through all the Nancy Drew games. We streamed all of those, and there's a beautiful joy in having a pair of people, because every now and then I would go, Danny, I'm just going to look at this thing for a while. You vamp for me. Chat with the audience for a little bit. I'm staring at some locks on a wall. Because, yeah, sometimes you do need that time. So it is interesting. And this one, I think that biggest moment for you, the only time I think for this entire room that it really felt like you needed to stop and stare was this moment transitioning into solving the Sondale Park figure, which is, I think, in this room, like the most like open entry. There's nothing that really gets that started other than let's see what we can do with numbers.
Yeah, I will say that I think that typically I prefer some kind of signposting that would point me in the direction of when you're going to want to use this. Like that's why the happy faces and the frowny faces, the happy faces and the angry faces.
And the angry faces.
They were very useful because they tied directly to another thing. And they said, okay, these two things are linked in some way. And it gives you that point to start from. Whereas the code being on my bracelet and also being related to sunscreen, that connection was very difficult for me to make in my head. I'm glad Robin was here because he's like, well, what if we add this number to it? And I never would have thought to do that because in my head, these were two very different pieces of the world, I guess.
Yeah.
Totally fair, with the one connecting factor to them being that it was called the Sondale Park figure, the SPF.
Yeah.
The clue I had in my back pocket for a long time, which I didn't end up needing to use for you, but the one that was in there was the question I was ready to ask was, hey, just a fun like side thing about sunscreen. What does SPF actually stand for? Well, the answer is like sun protection
factor. Yeah,
but
it would have been better if you didn't know, so that you could ask chat.
What does SPF stand for? And thinking, we have SPF written down, because that moment that you noticed that, Robin, was a nice thing of like,
yeah, that was fantastic.
It is the
actually.
SPF, especially because it was explicitly like plus the number, so it's SPF plus 375. So if you literally add the SPF and the 375 together, you get.
But it's true. When it comes to something like indexing numbers, especially for an escape room, if I had written them out separately as letters, nobody would have paused for a second. That would have been too painfully easy. So trying to figure out exactly what to do. We did have a chat in the playtest about how much to make these sort of indicators there. Like
this was less indicated in the playtest.
And I remember saying, should I have this remember your sunscreen when mastering the loops of the master slide? Should I make another reference to sunscreen specifically here? Things like that.
So we were positive. And this is one of those things, like when it comes to like the playtesting of these rooms, we allow ourselves to be a little bit looser with it because it doesn't go out to people who have to play it alone. It goes out to people who are playing it in a room with us as we do it. That's the intended experience. So we can have a little bit more like, all right, well, if this was a playtest for a game that was being released separately from us, then we'd probably end up adding a couple extra big.
That would be something that would be like an Easter egg, and definitely nothing that is required for the main quest.
But
the thing
absolutely. It's the thing that I liked about this one was if you separated the letters out too much, I think once you solve this, there is some fun in. Which of these versions is it? Is it K? Is it I? Is it A? Is it S? And like catching on to, I think I'm spelling out ask. All right, this is the path I need to follow. And I like that moment.
And it can depend on when you get to it, because it is there from not the beginning of the room, because you need the bracelet, but relatively early. There are so many different times that you could end up looking at that one. And I'm sure that will greatly affect your mood as you approach it and how willing you are to pull it apart and try a few things.
When I do puzzles and stuff like that, like one thing I often think about is, trust the person who, made the puzzle. Like they set up the rules, and there is, like, whether you acknowledge it or not, like a convention, for how puzzles are supposed to work and stuff like that. And I guess the tricky thing for me is I got tunnel vision, because I thought I saw those numbers early on and I thought, oh, well, it's either going to be a 1-digit or a 2-digit and neither of those worked for me. So I just got, it just made me ignore it altogether. And I think it was like, it's hard to sometimes break that tunnel vision when, when you're solving a puzzle.
Definitely.
Because I'm just sitting there looking at it and I'm like, well, it's not A. And then when I looked at it as 2 letters, I'm like, I got stuck on the second letter. So that immediately told me this is the wrong path. But in fact, it wasn't. It was a mixture of both. And that was what was very, very tricky for me. The adding part came later, but I liked that too.
You nailed that.
But when it came up though, when I saw that SPF, I was like, that is a great moment. Is that like, because sometimes failing feels good. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm not gonna say we failed the puzzle, but and we'll see how you edit. We'll see how you edit it. But we did need a couple nudges, let's say, in the right direction, and that was probably the puzzle we were on the longest. But in the end,
yeah, I felt like more of it was you would suggest something and we would say, yes, follow that path. We didn't tell you a path to follow.
Fair enough.
Like,
fair enough.
That is a nudge.
We didn't hand you the
nice
path.
Nudge.
You would always have to say a correct thing.
But I sometimes, like I said, like if you fail and then afterwards you're like, oh, I should have seen that. Like that's actually good to me in a way, and that's what happened when I saw the SPF thing in the end. I'm like, oh, it was right there. It was there the whole time, like that was the connecting tissue. So that felt good to me too.
There's an interesting thing with like, there's tools that exist and don't exist in, your particular medium of puzzle solving. And one of the things that we don't often have like super mechanically in this kind of very, very free TTRPG space is that sometimes like input confirmation is something that you can lose some of this mechanical. So especially when we get to things where it's a bit play around and see what happens, like in video games or in other things, or even in a physical escape room, you'll need to physically, like you may need to like input letters somewhere and they can sort of be like, oh, okay, my only options were these letters, and I'm either going A or K, and then the next one is I. And like you can play a bit more with the mechanical feedback of it. And we do that in this puzzle space as well. But this was one where we sort of tried to, there was a bit of a simulation of the mechanical feedback, literally as a person just being like, oh yeah, that does seem like it works. to as the version of something turning a bit green as it goes, or dinging it off and locking things in. And it's interesting. Sometimes we'll do that a bit more mechanically with like the oohs and ahs. It was very like you weren't quite sure what sound a monkey made until you had a board of the letters to choose between, and you're like, oh well, that's the sound a monkey makes.
I will say, I specifically in my notes have be very open about what is an acceptable sound for a monkey. Like I was going, maybe you press ooh, 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 maybe you go eat the e's. There are various monkey noises that are acceptable.
But it's it's an interesting sort of thing. Like feedback is always interesting and different for the medium.
And that numbers one, I definitely always intended for that to be more of a Game Master led one. Like when you got ask for, that had to be a Game Master moment of, you feel really good about that. You got ask for. That is not a coincidence. Why is it dying at the end? And that has to be an interaction thing.
Mm.
Well, I will say, that was pretty much all Robin. That whole puzzle ended up being Robin. So I was trying to do it on my side, and I don't know why, but my brain was just not braining, even once we knew that there were letters, and I was stuck on trying to even go like, okay, where's the ask for coming from? And I don't know why. I think I was just, instead of trying to do it on paper, I was counting with my fingers, and like, I don't know, just, boy, am I glad that you pretty much did all of that.
It didn't feel that way to me at all, by the way. When I was doing it, I didn't feel like I was. Like, I thought we were like riffing, like that's.
It's a back and forth. It's going forward, but really,
I'll listen back to this podcast and be like, I was talking during that time, and that's a scary thing to think. Yeah.
We infamously in our first season we had a room where there was a very intricate puzzle that went through playtesting, it went through a bunch of different things, and then it took a long time until someone was like, that T is not the, so that S is not the 20th letter of the alphabet, right? Like you put it as you put S equals 20. That's wrong, and this puzzle doesn't work. And we're like, oh, we did the episode, it'd been out for like a year, and it's like no one ever noticed that the final one, because it was just this thing like, oh, it probably says ask for. I'm like, yeah, and then 20, that's S, so that's the S in this phrase that I've got in my head, and so we've done it as well. Just sometimes you screw up the counting, and you're just like, yeah, that letter must be this. That's probably correct. It took us a while to fix that one.
Outrageous.
I have some root tree related stories that are very similar to that.
Well, I'm happy
really,
to
really
start to
bad
expand. Like,
ones.
yeah,
Well,
feel free, jump in with a root tree story if you'd like.
Before we do that, can we talk about the narrative a little bit?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
like,
Because I just want to say I loved the theme very much.
Oh,
I
Yeah,
thought,
me too.
I mentioned I've done a lot of escape rooms, and one thing, you couldn't do a water park at an escape room, or if you
not
did,
so much.
you-
Not easily.
or if you did, it would probably be fun to see what you come up with in that limitation. But I think the way we did it, like, this is using the medium to great effect. And one thing I see a lot, I play a lot of puzzle games online, and like they often fall into fantasy, solving a murder, things like that. One reason I was initially attracted to the Root Trees Are Dead is because it's a different one. It's like a family tree, and I think that water park was a really fun, great environment to tell this kind of story, and it just and the goal was very easy to identify with. Yeah, I want to ride the master slide. Yeah, of course, that's what I want to do. Like that was really
Speak for
cool.
yourself.
it's too big.
And then I wasn't kidding when I said, like, I actually felt like, and I don't know, I was curious, Danny, if this was intentional, because you wrote this, you said, right?
Yes.
I was curious if it was intentional that the engagement is the actual prize and not going on the slide, because you take that away from us in the end. You say, actually, no, after all that, you're not going on the slide, but you did get this beautiful moment.
I think in my head, the divine intervention of not having to go on the slide was the ultimate reward. But I do like that. I like giving a side thing. So that's, I don't know, you did some good in the world. I enjoy that. I enjoy you feeling like a hero, even in something as generally unheroic as I want to go on a water slide.
I don't know what you guys are talking about. We just did the puzzle so slow that it started raining by the time we got to the top. It's not like
Bummer.
it waited to start. I'm not going to start blaming the puzzle gods now.
Oh, yeah.
It's our own fault. If we had just done
You got the
30
bad
seconds,
ending.
30 seconds faster, we would have been down the slide.
All right, this was
Or
the
halfway
one
through the
time-
slide when they shut down. And that
The
would've
one
been
time
cool.
since season 1 where we were timing the guests to see what sort of ending they'd get.
Yeah.
But there is,
I
just
do
weren't
have
fast
my ideas page in this book. I've got one in all of my notebooks of different things, and water park is one of the ones that is now ticked off here. For some of the other more peculiar ones, and I say this every time, I've got magical dust adventure. Don't know where that's going. I believe I now have assimilating with wolves. So
Okay.
there's some ideas in here that I haven't seen before in a physical room.
I love
All
it.
right.
but yeah, it is
I mean,
interesting
those
to,
two
like,
things could be the same idea if you really think about it.
Intriguing.
I know they
Dust
talk about it like
wolves.
with movies or something. Like if you say something like, "Oh, if you put these two ingredients together, there will be explosion later." If you don't show the explosion later, it's known as, like, I've heard people call that, you're cheating the audience because you've told them something that's going to happen. So this story starts with, there is the best water slide in the world, and you're going to go on that loop. And you even tell us it's going to be this loop and that loop and that loop and that loop. And then in the end, we don't even get to go on it, which is interesting. That's why I asked, because
I did speculate for a long time while I was writing this one. I had everything down. I knew what the puzzles were going to be, but I did not have what the conclusion was going to be. And that's usually pretty rare. And it was quite an interesting thing. I was thinking, I mean, just getting up there, getting the points, and going on the slide doesn't feel right.
And
For the
yet,
ending?
What does?
and yet in a game, that is,
Of course.
when you're playing a game mechanically, if we're just talking from a pure mechanical perspective, it's the fun is actually solving the puzzles. You don't actually get to go on the slide, right? Like that can't be part
That's
of the
true.
fun. So you're promising something that actually isn't that fun compared to, like, that's not fun compared to solving the puzzles.
Yeah, exactly.
I
The
think
fun was
that's-
what you did.
And that can also be the thing, because this is in the conclusion. You are no longer participating. You're just listening to me now. So
Yeah.
I can say, yep, you go on it. You have a great time. It's hard to make you feel that.
Yeah. So
you know
that
what you
is
should have
interesting.
done? It should have been, you go down the slide, it drops, and you come up, and it hits the first loop. And as it does, you see that there's text on the top of the loop that says, written by Danielle Siller. And then you go to the next loop and it says, special thanks to our playtest. And then you go to the next one.
So the credit sequence, basically.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Anyway,
I also think that this season has been a little bit my season of, I don't want to say cliffhangering, but just a little bit where the ending isn't quite the ending that you think it's going to be. You think that there's going to be the one final satisfying step, and then I just haven't.
It's just
the
twists all the way,
sequel bait.
twists and turns.
Yeah.
It's
Like
just
on the
a,
master
it's just a
slide.
choice like anything else, and I thought it was interesting. But like I said,
Yeah.
I got my satisfying ending in the proposal, so I'm all good.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it was definitely something that I spent a bit of time thinking about for sure.
You found some. Gave people true love. You gave a boy his thumbs back.
Yeah.
You did a lot.
It's the sequel one is how Chet got his thumbs back or whatever.
Exactly. But yeah, so Jeremy mentioned earlier that you had some like root trees stories to talk about. Like,
I don't
Do
know
you
if I
wanna
can
talk a little bit
tell
about-
the story because it really does spoil a pretty big part of the plot of Root Trees.
oh no, maybe we
what-
can't tell the story.
Yeah. But it's pretty bad. Like where what I don't remember how we got onto the subject again, but it was like, is the S doesn't equal 20 or
Yep.
whatever, right?
Mm,
Okay. I'll try and be as vague as I can.
please.
In Root Trees, at the end, there is a character you have to write their name in manually. You know that from the very beginning. It says on the tree, you'll need to put this person's name in manually. Now, here's where it gets tricky to talk about. But that person is somewhat related, as everyone is, because it's a family tree, to another person, and they have a name that's not completely dissimilar to them.
Sure.
And there's something in the game named after that person. And when the first time I ever added that story element to the game, I accidentally used the wrong name of the person you have
no.
to fill in at the end. I named this
Yeah.
whole thing, and I built this whole section of the game around the name of the person you have to fill in. And then,
then you
when you
got it
looked
wrong.
up that thing, you're like, this name isn't on the tree.
Yeah,
It's
that
like,
is
wait,
rough.
oh, yeah. It's again, for those of you who haven't played it, I try to be as vague as I can. But for those of you that have, hopefully you know what I'm talking about.
I definitely understand.
Yeah. So
Oh, that's so annoying.
I will say-
yeah. Luckily, I caught it before someone ever got there. And it was during playtest, so it wasn't that big a deal. But that was definitely an S equals 20 moment for me.
It is hard to account for everything, even with we did a lot of testing. Jeremy's always been a big fan of testing of the original game, and then the Steam version had a lot of testing as well. And I've been fixing mistakes in the game up until 2 weeks ago, even. Like, we're getting people reporting things. I mean, part of it's that there's a phenomenal amount of text. It's like almost 100,000 words. Now, you don't have to read 100,000 words to beat the game, but if you start going into the supplemental material and going down side thing, looking up articles for anything mentioned in the game or things in the room, you might find extra articles, things like that. But yeah, I found our nemesis is dates. As people find, they look for the dates and the orders of things, and
I was
these things were
so
planned.
afraid while playing about how carefully I needed to pay attention to dates.
If
And-
you are listening to this right now and have not played Root Trees, you do not need to pay attention to dates.
Yeah,
But there are those of you that will. And when they're wrong, you'll tell us.
they love it. And I've had to change the same piece of evidence multiple times because I feel like I fixed the date, and then someone's like, no, that doesn't fix it because it has to come before this event, and it has to come before this event.
I was
They-
really worried about that with Golden Idol
We
as
had a bit
well.
of that in Golden Idol
because we were all doing our scenes separately, just going, and I was panicking the whole time because every time I would play test a scene, there'd be like a newspaper article with a date on it. I was like, I don't know if this makes sense.
Yeah.
I've got to make a
I think
list of all of
we
this.
had a shared document between all of the people writing all the scenes for Rise of the Golden Idol that had like exactly the timeline of when every date is referenced, and I don't think that was ever correct at
Yeah.
any point in development. It was always just like, wait a minute, and then we got to check this again. Did you say this was happening in May? Does that give time? No, I don't think that. Okay, no. I never
you
said
think
May.
this
one was-
person moved house in 2 weeks?
So
God.
dates weird. I understand a little bit of that feeling of just they get out of hand and there's implications in the dates that someone is going to realize, and you're going to have to
My
be like, oh, I
favorite
never meant to
one-
imply that. I'm so sorry.
My favorite one in Root Trees was actually when someone corrected you and said, "Oh, it says the plane crash at the beginning that sets off the whole game. The game's called The Root Trees Are Dead, and it starts with the plane crash. And like the plane crash, you have the wrong date on the computer. You're saying it's the wrong day, and so you changed it, Robin.
Yeah.
And then I was like, no. The opening news thing says the plane that crashed last night.
Yes.
So someone had like totally missed that and said like,
Oh,
the game's taking place.
that's
So
terrible
Robin
too.
actually changed it, and then we had to change it back.
Which is
Ah,
that's game development in a nutshell.
Yeah.
Yep. Always. All right.
Look, it was fantastic to have you on. We were so excited. We were such big fans of The Root Trees Are Dead. Again, if you're listening to this and you haven't played it yet, go and check it out. You will enjoy. If you enjoy the show, you will enjoy that game. You'll have a lot of fun. If you are not much of a gamer, I think it's also a really good game to get into puzzle games because it is unique in the way it deals with like how you interact with it. You don't need to be like, oh, I'm not good at gaming or anything like that. You can jump in and I think play Root Trees because it presents itself and explains itself as it goes.
And
So
if you're interested, it worked really well as a 2-player experience.
it's also
too.
very fun to play with a friend.
Mhm.
Definitely would very much recommend it. Play it with your partner and you'll have a great time. For people who wanted to check out Root Trees or anything else, is there anywhere they should be following or looking out for things online that you want to send them to?
Oh, if you want to buy The Root Trees Are Dead, it's on Steam. You can find the link at roottrees.com. That's 2 O's, 2 T's. We do have a mailing list that's linked from inside the game. That's probably the best way to sign up to get future notifications of future projects, but we're also on Blue Sky. That's also linked to from the Steam page and stuff like that. So I recommend any of those ways to follow us is good. Do you have
Brilliant.
something to add, Jeremy? Or
Nope,
no,
that was
very
it.
good. So yeah,
All right,
Fantastic.
lovely.
mailing list is good for future projects. I'll say that.
Yes, and definitely
so
we will
excited.
be keeping an ear to the ground for future projects because we'll be excited to do anything else that you guys produce. So thank you so much for coming on the show. Thank you, Danny, for running a great room. And thank you, everybody at home, for listening. I hope you enjoyed listening to the show. If you want to help the show keep going along, tell someone about the show. It's the best way to help support us, spread the word, tweet about, or put it online, tell a friend, tell an enemy, and help grow the show. It's word of mouth is the best way to get people to listen to podcasts. You can also help support the show on Patreon. We don't run ads on the show. All of the money that we make that keeps our lights on and food in the fridge is through crowdsourced donations to keep art alive. You're all tiny little Medicis donating to us, the tiny Leonardo da Vinci's. I don't know who the Medici family gave money to. Probably Leonardo da Vinci. I think that worked. Your patrons the art, so thank you so much for supporting us. Anybody who supports at any level can appear as a character in one of the rooms that Danny's writes.
So thank you so much to Joe Sondow, Chet B, and Paige Worrell, our Patreon donors, who got names of characters or water parks in this episode.
Yes, welcome. Being a water park is great. Not many people get to be a water park. It's just you. There's also a whole bunch there's new weekly episodes of bonus audio. You can hear the playtests. You can hear us solving 2-minute mysteries and reading through Encyclopedia Browns and a whole bunch of other fun stuff. There's weekly podcasts for the $5 donors. There's extra videos for the $10 donors. There's trivia for $20 donors. There's a whole bunch of fun stuff there. So thank you so much for supporting us there. If you do, and if you don't, you could start. You can even just jump in for like 1 month, download as much content as you can, and then leave. I'm not going to police you. Thank you so much for supporting the show. Thank you, Danny, for writing. Thank you once more to Robin and Jeremy for coming on.
Absolutely, thank you.
Thank
And
you.
thank you guys both for sure. That was incredible.
So much
Wonderful.
fun. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Before we go, there's one last thing I'd like to do. And that is I return home from the water park. And I take off my bracelet. And I throw it in the fire.
There we go. Fulfilling the promise